everyone, welcome back to Cowboy Ranch Life. My name is Winston, and today we're going to be doing something a little different. I would like to ask you, if you've lived on a farm, or even if you haven't lived on a farm, what do you know about a grease gun? Now, we're going to gotta go through some things, because we all have, if you've been on a farm, you'll go back to your grandpa's corner of the shed, or ours, and you'll have this. Now this here is an example of, well, the typical grease gun on the farm. There's 17 of them in a bucket. They've all got grease watered all over them, and we hate all 17 because they will not pump grease and you fight them daily. Well, I'm trying to change that. So we're going to go through the grease gun steps, kind of show you how a grease gun is designed, and show you some of the typical fights. So then you can hopefully kind of understand a grease gun a little bit better and maybe not fight it so much on the farm, and then maybe more things will be greased, which means less mechanic work and so forth, so on and so forth down the line of a farm's things that we have to fight. So we're going to turn this bucket into 1 or 2 working grease guns, so next time you're at an auction or at the local store, you won't feel tempted to buy a grease gun because you'll know at home you've got a good, clean, working grease gun that you enjoy using, not only because it works easily, but also because you don't have to fight it. So, with that said, let's stay tuned, and we're going to keep working on this. Alright, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to need to gather up some materials so you can clean the grease gun, because nobody likes working on something that's going to get your hands and your clothes all dirty and stained, and grease does stain clothes. So, first you need to get your blue paper towels, you need to get some brake parts cleaner or gas, your choice, and you need to get other paper towels just in case things get a little extreme. And you need to get yourself a cup of water. This is not from Dairy Queen. Well, the cup's from Dairy Queen, the water's not from Dairy Queen. That was lunch. Nevertheless, and you need to get yourself some pliers, and let's get right into this thing. Alright, so, first thing I wanted to kind of explain the difference in grease guns, grease gun ends, some of that. So the difference here is that this is called a pistol grip, if you can see that. You just pistol grip it, so it's a one-hand usable grease gun. This, on the other hand, is not. This goes on your end of your tube, such as that, and so you need to hold the tube with one end and really pump with the other. So that's a two-ended grease gun. Different applications, you can get more pressure. If you've got a grease zerk that's a little hard taking grease, you can use this type. If you've got some easy-to-take grease zerks that don't necessarily need as much pressure, or it's in a hard-to-get-to spot where you need to hold this end with one end and pump with the other, this is the best for that option. Different methods for different reasons. So with that said, also, I think I mentioned before, we need to get some pliers involved here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to kind of explain how it works. And with that said, that's why I wanted you to get a cup of water. So I'm going to get a trash can. I'm going to kind of show how this works. So if Justice, if you would step in here with the camera a little bit, just move on in. And we're going to see, if you can see this, now I'm using this grease gun as an example. We can use any of them, but we look at it from the head's perspective. This is called a vent, if you can see that. So that lets the excess air out of the grease gun. And then this here, this head actually has the optional item where you can actually fill the head with a bucket pump or something. If you buy your grease in bulk quantities of like 5-gallon or 55-gallon drums of grease, that would be the application for that, so that you can fill it that way. We do not do that. We use the tube grease, so that would be of no use to us, but it did come with the option on this handle. Nevertheless, I'm going to show you inside here, if you can see that. So pretty much this is the vent area, and you can see it moves back and forth just a little bit. I'm going to try to move it a little bit here. There, you can see that moves. Like I said, this is the piece where you can actually fill it if you have bulk grease. And this in here is the cylinder piece that actually pumps it. So if you can see this rod right here, watch in this hole, you can see it move. If I can hold the head steady enough, just watch it. You can see, right? You can see it move right through there. So what we're going to do to make sure, the first step of elimination is that you want to make sure that the actual head is not the problem. If the head's the problem, then there's no point in going through the rest of the gun. That's why I said to get some water. So we're going to stick water into here. And remember, water does not pass through that piece into to the hose until you pump it. So we're going to do it. I'm going to try to hold it without spilling the water on top. And we're going to watch through the hose. And you can see it's letting a little water out. It's not letting as much as regular grease would be because water gets back through it. Grease just is a little bit thicker, and so it's not pumping the water as well as grease. But you are seeing here that it is not the head itself. There you go. It caught it. There we go. And you see it's pumping water, so it's not the head because we're getting pressure, and as you can see, it's putting it out in a jet. So we've therefore self-eliminated that it is not the head that is the issue. So now we're going to move on to the cylinder, the tube, the piece the tube goes into. So as you can see here, and this is a broken one, and I thought, well, heck, might as well drag it out there because that kind of explains everything a little bit better. All right, so as you can see, here is the tube cylinder piece of the grease gun, so the head would apply onto that and you would screw it on. Also, I want to mention before I get any farther in this, when you are screwing the head onto the cylinder piece, do not cross thread that. If you cross thread that, you will lose major components in the grease gun, pretty much meaning that you'll get grease squirting out there and then you'll lose pressure, and then pretty much unfortunately you've ruined your grease gun. So we're going to take it apart, and this is what the rags are for. So you can see, I'm taking the rubber piece out first, then I'll take the spring out, then I'm going to pull the rod out the end. So, and like I said before, this one's the broken one. This should not actually come apart, but this is good it's coming apart because then we can kind of show you how it works. So in here, that's kind of how it's set up, if you can see that. Then this rod, there we go. So that's how it's set up inside the cylinder piece. So we're going to get the cylinder piece out of the way because we really don't need that in the video anymore. So inside, if you're standing it up, this piece here is the rubber piece, and so your tube of grease would be like that. Now this rubber piece goes inside the grease tube, which then therefore shoves the grease out the tube into the gun where you pump it. It pumps it just like the water explanation through the hose into your grease zerk, which we'll show in a minute. So then, here's the rubber piece. It's on a spring system. The reason you have a spring system is that it pushes all the air out of the cylinder piece. And so this rubber piece, the reason it's broke is this rubber piece actually should be mounted on this steel rod. It broke, so that is no longer the part. The way it should work is like that. Now, we've just compressed that spring into here. This rubber piece is right in here, and we've pulled the rod out, and it actually clicks in the side there, in the little side pocket, so that it is fully pulled back. So, as you can see, take a new tube, or in this case, I'm going to use the old one because it's already ready. You can just go, and you can drop it right in. And there's what the pliers are for. Always watch out because these metal pieces can be sharp. So, now on to the next part. Alright, so we're going to explain a little bit of how the end of the grease gun works. So after you've got your handle piece, like this one, pistol grip one, on the end is the tip of the grease gun, which is here. Now some of them are adjustable, this one is not. What it is, if you can see that, and Justice, you can zoom in how it works for the camera, but you can see there's 4 little points there. On those 4 little points is what actually clicks on to the grease zerk. So if you can see that, the grease zerk's got a little bit of taper there. And it just snaps right in. And this one's hard, so it might, there we go, and snapped in. So now, as you can see, I can wiggle it, but it's hard to pull out. The reason for that is because you can apply large amounts of pressure by hand on your grease gun, onto the grease zerk, and it'll pop the grease out, and it'll be a lot easier for it to take grease. So nevertheless, that is the reason you want it to actually snap on. Then you can go, and there's different ends, you know, you can go to a regular store and buy whatever end you want, but then you can just go and pop it right off. But if you try to pull it out, it's almost impossible to pull out. So you just pop it off, and it keeps the pressure in there correctly. Alright, so now as you just got the analysis of a grease gun explained, let's get on to the other parts of the grease gun. Feel free to get a damp rag and wipe your hands as this messy business has just begun. Nevertheless, I did want to point out that there are different thread types to grease guns. So for instance, this handle or head will not fit this black cylinder. So when you buy a grease gun, make sure that it's all complete. If it is not complete, take your cylinder up to the local store and make sure that your head fits it, because there are different thread types, which therefore means that it will not fit, which will not get suction and compression, and then you will have no grease gun. So nevertheless, we're going to kind of go through this a little bit. First off, you're going to install a tube of grease into the gun. So what you're going to do is you're going to unscrew the head. Now in this instance, I've already extracted the old tube of grease, but your main piece would be, before you unscrew the head, you would take this, pull it back, unscrew the head, pull your tube of grease out. Always do that always pull this before you unscrew your head if you have an existing old tube of grease, because it can still have a little bit of pressure and come out at you. Nevertheless, also, another safety tip, take your black piece, your plastic piece, off this part of the grease tube, and if you can see, this is just the cardboard piece. This is not the metal piece on that end. Pull your center stock piece back, stick your tube of grease in, and then pull the cap. If you pull this before you put the black piece in, you may have the accidental chance of this thing shooting up and putting all the grease into your face. So we're going to pop this just like a can of soup or a can of soda. Now we have installed the grease tube into the cylinder. We're going to then put the head screwed back on. And I'm going to kind of explain. As you just saw, this head came out of it. I told you this one wouldn't fit. If you can see this. Okay, that fit all the way without me having to screw it on. So it's a little bit bigger. That's the difference on grease heads. I'm sure there's other types. These are the two that we have around our shop. But I'm sure the electrical ones and some of that might be a little bit different. So always be kind of careful when you buy that. Nevertheless, you're going to screw that on. Always make sure never to cross thread, because if you cross thread, you can say goodbye to your grease gun. You might as well throw it all in there, or put it in the 5-gallon bucket with the rest of the grease guns that you might have in your shop. All right, so after you get that snug, push that in. All right, so now that we've got the tube in the grease gun, we're going to make sure that it pumps grease. Now, there will be a little bit of excess grease, but what should happen is, since you have excess grease in there, you should be able to just pump this right out and right in. There should be not any, middle point where there's no grease. You should just be able to get it right out. So we're going to hopefully that pumps out. And I hate doing this, but there's 3 pumps, and that should have cleaned out your line. And then here's the 4th one, and you see you still got pressure. So, with that said, and if my father's watching this, yes, I accidentally, not accidentally, on purposely wasted 5 pumps of grease. Nevertheless, so there's the explanation of a grease gun. If you have air bubbles in your tube and you can't get grease out of the hose, which you so badly want to pinch off and cut off sometimes, you can take your grease gun, just like this, same with the pistol grip, and just go about 4 or 5 times, and that'll gravity feed the grease to the head and put the air to the top if there is any air, but it should let it all out the vent, so there shouldn't be any air in your gun that way. And then you can, of course, pump it like I just did, and you should have grease. There's, I guess, tips 101 on how a grease gun works. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, don't forget to subscribe down below. Comment if you do. If you have any wisdom or tips. If you've been down this before and I forgot to show something, or maybe you thought I should have showed something different, please comment that down below. I'm always open to new tips, and I like to learn too. So please comment that down below, and so we can all learn together. Also, wanted to mention, if you haven't already, go follow us on Cowboy Ranch Life on Instagram, where we kind of feature different tips. We don't normally put out product videos like this, but we definitely thought this was a problem on the farm, as I fight it numerous times a week. So here's kind of how we explain it. So now I have a grease gun that made me mad enough I wanted to throw it down and hit it with a hammer. Working again. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for viewing this video. I hope you all have an awesome day, and keep greasing. Don't forget to clean up once in a while.